Hi, my name is Ferrial Adam. I am an environmental justice activist. I work on issues of climate change, energy, and water. I think that our water resources are undervalued and that we need to do a lot more work around how do we protect our water resources. One of the questions I was asked was, what advice would I give to young women in science or going into science? And I think for me, the important thing is to realize that science is not something that's separate to our lives, that it's very much part of who we are, and we can use it to find amazing solutions, to problems that we're facing in society. And I think what we find is that from high school, there's a tendency to focus on males and young boys doing science because they're going to be the engineers, they're going to be the doctors. But I think that we have to look beyond that. It's not just engineers and doctors that use science. In my thesis, one of the interviews I did was of a young woman who, when I asked, I said, "Can you tell me about, what do you think about science?" And she was like, no, I know nothing about science. Please, I know nothing about science. And then I said, okay, don't worry. There's no right or wrong question. I was a researcher, and I said, okay, let's leave that question. Tell me what you do. And then she said, she's a farmer. And I said, okay, can you tell me what that entails? Like, how do you prepare to farm? And she explained to me everything she does. So there's a piece of land, they block, they have a square and they block it off, and they take samples. She didn't use samples, but they take, she said, we use this like pole, that's like a straw, a big straw, and we put that in the four corners of the square and in the center. And then we take the soil out and we put it in a 2-liter bottle, we fill it with water, and we leave it. And with that, we can ascertain what the soil is that we're working with, whether it's loamy, whether it's clay. And I was like, this is all science. Everything you're doing is science. But this young woman was, because our society makes it sound as if science is white coats and lab glasses, that what you're doing in your everyday life is not considered science. And that's the thing, is the problem with science is that it's been privatized, it's been corporatized, it's been taken over. So it locks people out of their own lives. And I think that is the challenge for us, is how do we find ways to change that? How do we make science more accessible? And it is possible. So in my research in water, people are being trained to test river health using very simple methods. It doesn't have to be complicated. And doing that has enabled them to get more involved in environmental issues. They now identify alien vegetation species. All of that is science, and it's very it's useful to the areas in which they live in. A lot of these people who are working on these projects have lived in areas which, when there are high levels of rainfall in KZN, they get flooded. And they've been able to reduce that. So I think that science must not be something that is out of people's reach. It must be accessible. And we can find ways to do that. We can also acknowledge the ways that things are happening in terms of science. So innovation around climate change and climate justice is happening on the ground. And a lot of that is being done by women, because they are the farmers, they are the ones who are collecting the water in rural areas, but also in urban areas. Women make up most of the households, the head of households, and they're responsible for energy, they're responsible for food, they're responsible for water, and they're finding innovative ways of dealing with that, given the context of South Africa, where a lot of people are unemployed, we don't have a lot of money. And so they have to find different ways of doing it. And they're using science. They just don't know that they are. So I think it's also about, for me, I think people should get involved in science and know that it's not just one thing. It is not, you can't say science and it's that thing. We need to move away from defining science as something that's separate. We have to include the innovation. We have to include nature. We have to include indigenous knowledge. All of that has aspects of science that because of colonization, because of apartheid, people were not talking about it, or they were basically felt that their knowledge is less than others. And I think that's the challenge for women. How do we make this more interesting, more real, and something that is not removed from our everyday lives and activities? So, yeah, that's my answers to the question, and I wish you well and good luck. Thank you.